Canada legalized cannabis 3 years ago, and it remains the biggest fully legal cannabis market in the world. But the Canadian companies that trade here in the United States have struggled. Frank Holland joins us right now with Toronto with more on this story. And Frank, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Becky. Well, right now, Tilray is the only one of the top 5 Canadian cannabis companies in the green for 2021 as these companies, they continue to adjust to the increasingly recreational nature of this market. 95% of all cannabis sales here in Canada, they're made in retail stores like this Tokyo Smoke location here in downtown Toronto. Up north here in Canada, cannabis flower, a.k.a. pot, a.k.a. weed, and pre-rolled joints filled with pot and weed, they really dominate the market as opposed to higher margin products like drinkables, like edibles, like vapes, drinkables like these, for example. It's been a real challenge for these Canadian companies, but Canopy CEO David Klein, he says he sees those trends changing day by day.
New consumers coming into this space come in through drinks and edibles and possibly vapes. And so as those new consumers come in, instead of it being a small percentage of their consumption, it's likely to be a majority of their consumption.
And Canadian stocks have seen the impact of that trend. Year to date, as I mentioned, for the top 5 Canadian producers, their shares are negative. Shares, they started to surge at the start of 2021 on exuberance over potential U.S. federal legalization. But the outlook, remains unclear, even with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer pushing for reform. Canadian producers, they cannot sell in the U.S. Only U.S. producers can at the state level. And there, it's really a patchwork of laws. California, it's a market that rivals Canada. There's also multi-billion-dollar recreational markets in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, all approved this year. Only 4 states do not allow any form of cannabis or CBD or have decriminalized cannabis. To prime themselves for the lucrative $30 billion U.S. market in 2022, the top 5 Canadian stocks, they've have options to acquire U.S. companies, investments, or partnerships that provide direct cannabis selling access if federal legalization happens, or access to U.S. supply chains. The question remains here is the if. Before, it was kind of seen as a when. And right now, as you can see, all the Canadian stocks, they're up this morning ahead of that 3-year anniversary on Sunday. Becky, back over to you.
Frank, when you talk to the cannabis companies, what do they say their biggest frustration is, if anything?
I think one of the big frustrations for them has really just been COVID, like it has been for many businesses. During COVID, their stores were shut down and they weren't allowed to have customers inside the store. As I mentioned, 95% of sales are recreational. Yeah. So the store experience is really crucial to building brands, to building brand awareness, and also customer loyalty.
Do you get a different vibe there than here in the United States with any of these stores, just because it's nationalized, or is it pretty much the same thing?
Very different vibe, Becky. I mean, you can kind of look around. I'm going to ask my photographer, Alex Herrera, to kind of show around. You look here, this looks like almost like an Apple store, maybe like a Banana Republic in the U.S. It's a very different vibe than the dispensaries that you see in the U.S. For example, over here, you're seeing like a lot of colorful earth tones and things like that. You don't see that so much in the U.S. It's definitely a different vibe and a different experience. Up here also, they have things called bud tenders, which are the people that work here. They really try to guide you through your journey to picking out what kind of cannabis is good for you. I know, it's like a sommelier for cannabis.
Yeah, right.
A sommelier almost, yeah, because there's different strains and different things. I'm going to pick up this cannabis again. So the bud tender was telling me all about this cannabis, for example, with the different colors, the different strains, things to help you sleep, things to give you some energy.
Wow.
He even suggested one for Joe, but Joe's off today.
Let me guess, a calming one?
You know what? I don't want to put words in his mouth, but all he said to me, he goes, "You need to give Joe this." I just can't bring it back over the border.
Yeah.